Alright, in this part of the lesson we're just going to look at one more special type of graph, and I have it up here as f of x equals this funny looking bracket x funny looking bracket. What's interesting, I've seen this function listed several different ways, and in fact my equation editor doesn't even have it the way that our text has it. So the text does a bracket with sort of a double bar and then the x. I've also seen it as just a standard bracket x like that. And then what I'll also see is some text, or actually like technology, it'll use the phrase int x. It uses basically a word to represent the brackets int. So the int tells you a little bit about something with it. It's called the greatest integer function. I like the brackets here that I picked because it gives you also a hint as to what's happening, because it's also called the floor function. And what the greatest integer function or the floor function does is it's good for any real number, so the domain is all real numbers, but it only provides integer outputs. Meaning, say I put a 1 in. Well, when I put a 1 in, I get a 1 out. Kind of looks like y equals x, right? But what it does is it rounds down any non-integers. So plug an integer in, get an integer out. If I put 2 in, I get 2. But let's go a little past that. If I decide to plug 2.1 in, I get 2 out. If I plug a 2.2 in, I get 2 out. If I plug a 2.9 in, I get 2 out. So this is also called the step function, because when you start to graph it, what you'll see is when I graph the 2, I'll go with all the points I have. So I've got 1, 1, I've got 2, 2, and then any level of 2 that I plug in, I'm getting 2 out. Now when I get to 3 though, I'm going to put an open circle right there, because it will jump up to 3. Open circle at the end of 3, jumps up to 4. The 1 bar would be the same. Anything from 0 to 1 is going to give me 0. 1's going to jump up to 1. In fact, you might see, like, it's a little tough with the touchscreen, but you can put some closed circles on the left end. You don't necessarily need to do that. The pattern continues. Open circle, step. Open circle, step. So this is called the greatest integer function, or the step function. Very applicable in life, because we have a lot of things, especially in commerce and value or money, where we maybe charge the same amount for things that are on the same level. A couple examples, postage. When you do postage, it's often, there's a range of weights that you get charged the same amount for. So if it was postage, the x-axis might be how much your letter weighs, the y-axis might be how much it costs. Domain and range, I had said domain is all real numbers on this one. You can plug anything in you want. How about that range though? Range is not all real numbers, right? Because you only get integers out. So that's really how you say the range. You can just say the range is all integers, or let me show you a fancier way, a more algebraic or mathematical way, and that's using set notation. So we use a bracket. We can say the set of all x's, vertical bar is the phrase such that x is a member of, and then this will be kind of funky. You probably saw this somewhere in your algebra career. Z is actually, the scripted Z is what's used to represent integers. So that's the set of all x's such that x is an integer. So the greatest integer function, definitely a little more unusual and has some different behavior, but it's still a special function.